Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's story is another spine-tingling tale from the wonderful mind of VatoCabron. As ever, please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help build the channel and our community further. Why not hashtag TeamFEAR? And so, with that aside, let's get into tonight's story, entitled I Found Something Terrifying and Unexplainable While Hunting a Couple of Weeks Ago. Let's get straight into that. I am an avid unplanned bird hunter who lives in Oregon. And I have a Flushing dog I train to hunt, an English setter, Reggie, who I take out most weekends of hunting season to look for pheasant, quail, grouse, partridge, or ducks. And for the last 3 years, the only meat I've eaten from mid-September through to the end of January has been the birds my dog and I hunt, plus the elk or deer I usually bag in during the archery season. It's something I've become pretty passionate about. 2 weekends ago was the end of quail, grouse and partridge season, and so I planned a day trip out to eastern Oregon. And for those who don't know, most of Oregon is essentially a desert. The area between the Cascade Mountains and the Pacific is rainy and forested, and what most people think of when they picture Oregon. However, with the exception of the few small mountain ranges, 2/3 of the state east of the Cascades is just sage brush, red rocks, and arid country for hundreds of miles to the Idaho border. And while quite cold at this time of year, it's still amazingly beautiful, and with literally millions of acres of public land, where there's great bird hunting. I loaded Reggie and my gear into the truck early Saturday morning, several hours before sunrise, and set off. And just at first light, we got to the big, open river valley. I'd spent lots of time exploring, but this specific area was new to me. It was about 30 degrees, looked like a light dusting of snow the night before, but otherwise pretty dry, and would be a fairly clear day. I love these moments, maybe more than anything in life. Being the only human in a massive wild landscape without a single trail or building for miles. The isolation, the giddiness for the upcoming adventure. The feeling of exploring an area that looked the same 500 years ago. The feeling of going out to get my own food. The contrast between hot coffee in my thermos and the cold winter wind on my exposed hands. All of it. Just my favourite place to be. I got the dog ready, put on my boots and pack, loaded the shotgun, and we set off along the top of the valley ridge 600 to 700 yards above the river, looking out over the arid, cold landscape hued by silvery blue wolf light of the early winter mornings. And for those who've never seen it, watching a hunting dog work is truly a fascinating spectacle to behold. It's honestly why I enjoy upland bird hunting and so much. And to me, watching a really good hunting dog actively hunt for wild game birds is honestly not that much different from watching a trained dolphin or sea lion at Sea World, or something like that. A work dog doing its job can be so focused and intelligent, and it's shocking sometimes. I trained Reggie well, but so much of it is primal and innate. It's Reggie's 6th hunting season, and so we spent hundreds of days off trail, exploring the backcountry. And we've really learned to read each other well. Coastal rainforests, high desert, alpine mountains, hardwood forests, farmland, swamps, marshes. We've adventured through it all together. If there's a game bird near, Reggie sells it. I can tell from how his tail moves, the frequency of sniffing and the lateral angles of his turns. I can tell if he smells another person from how he looks back at me. I can tell if he smells a coyote, wolf, bear or mountain lion from how he drops his spine. I can tell if he smells an elk, deer, or moose from how he tilts his head to catch the wind. He's my best friend. We're a real solid team. About an hour after we started hiking along the valley ridge, we came to a gully that cut downhill through the ridge towards the river, which we'd have to cross. I picked a route down the steep rise to the dry boulder-filled creek bed at the bottom of the gully, where a deer trail led back up to the other side. Halfway down the slope, Reggie started acting real strange. He stopped about 30 feet in front of me, cocked his head to the side and fixed his gaze down to our left, toward a spot in the dry creek bed as it dropped down the valley. He then leaned his head forward, as if trying to get a better view, and then started turning around towards me without pulling his eyes off the spot, which he really only does when he's scared of something, like when we go to the vet or I start up a chainsaw. And then he bolted up the steep side of the gully to where I was standing. "What is it, bud?" He kept switching his gaze from my eyes to the same spot below us, while pacing around in half circles. Strange. My first thought was mountain lion, which I always had at the back of my mind. They're all over the place out here, but they usually clear out long before they let people, let alone a person with a dog, get this close to them. I figured that probably wasn't it. Whatever, I thought. We've got to cross the gully and keep moving, and so I patted the dog on the head and kept on moving down towards the bottom of the gully. Reggie, he stayed right on my heels the entire time. At the bottom of the gully was a dry creek bed loaded with car-sized boulders, with lots of rocks and gravel running between the rock formations and steep, grassy walls of the gully. As I was crunching over the gravel, Reggie stopped in the middle of the creek bed, and once again was fixated on something to our left, down the gully. This time, he dropped his spine and I could see his hackles raise. Oh shit, I thought. Maybe there really was some kind of predator in the rocks down there. I flipped the safety off of my shotgun and started talking to Reggie in a cute/buddy tone that I use when I'm trying to calm him down. And I started walking towards a big boulder in the middle of the creek bed that was blocking my view. It looked like once I had passed it, I'd have a clear field of view over the entire gully, all the way down the valley side to the river. And Reggie was still frozen in place. I patted his head as I passed on his right side, and once I got a few paces past him, I noticed he wasn't following me, which he would usually do, even if it was a bear ahead of us. I looked back at him. "Let's go, bud. What's up there? Let's go get it." Usual comments I'd make to him to get him all jazzed and excited to check an area out. He started pacing around in half circles again, and with his ears back and his tail down. What the fuck? I thought. Definitely never seen him do this before, unless, again, we're at the vet. He doesn't like shots. I've seen him chase 400-pound black bears off my property and squabble with countless coyotes. He's not scared of much. This got me pretty anxious. I shouldered my shotgun and decided that before we keep moving, at this point, checking behind the boulder where something had the dog all tweaked out was a safe thing to do. I moved fast. In my experience dealing with cougars and black bears, 99.9% of the time, you bump into one. They're absolutely terrified and run away as fast as they possibly can, especially when surprised by something with confident movement that's making a lot of noise. But definitely don't do this with grizzly. I heard Reggie start following me as I started to boogie around the boulder. And I came around the big rock on the right side, and in front of me was a big clearing in the creek bed, and a huge bighorn sheep, a ram, no more than 25 feet in front of me. We've run into bighorn sheep out in this country all the time, so it wasn't that much of a surprise. What was surprising was how this thing was sitting. That's the only way I can think to describe it. It was sitting on its folded back legs like a dog or a cat would, holding itself up with a straight-backed posture, front legs locked forward and with its hooves in the gravel, staring straight ahead so I couldn't see its face. "What the fuck?" I said out loud. "These are very wary and skittish animals. They'd never let a person get this close." A bunch of things went through my mind at the same time. Maybe it's dead. No, it was cold. I could see steam coming from its slow breaths. Maybe it's wounded and dying. Maybe it's stuck on some old fencing or something. Right then, Reggie started barking. Not just barking, but snarl barking, like he was in a fight. He's a pretty quiet dog generally, and he never barks at deer, elk or ram. Maybe prances after them for a few seconds instinctively, if we bump into one hiking and spook it. But he's never been very interested in big mammals. It startled me. I looked back at him, and he had his front legs splayed out, his head was down, his tail was down, and his hackles were raised up so high he didn't even look like an English setter anymore. And he was fully baring his teeth and barking and snarling like I'd never seen. He looked feral, like a coyote. I could hear the snap of his teeth as he barked again and again. I looked back at the ram, still just sitting there, unmoving, staring straight ahead. Now that was fucking strange. I'd never known a wild mammal to do anything but bolt away, terrified at the presence of a canine, let alone not even more move a muscle with a canine being aggressive. I was pretty convinced at that point that the ram had to be real sick or super fucked up in some way, and definitely close to death. Even if it was tangled up on something or had got trapped in a leg snare, it would be freaking the hell out with a dog going ballistic next to it in the way Reggie was. "Reggie, here!" I yelled to him. "Here!" This is sort of my catch-all command for him, meaning stop what you're doing and get on my heels right fucking now. Reggie, he didn't even look at me. I took my shotgun in my left hand, turned and took a step towards the dog and pointed at the ground in front of me and pretty much screamed, "Reggie, here!" Again, nothing. He just kept barking and snarling at the ram with increasing intensity. Well, that really put me on edge. He's never just completely ignored a firm command before. It's like I wasn't even there. I turned back to the ram and shouldered my shotgun again. Something was wrong. Real fucking wrong. All my years spent in the back country, hunting and tracking big game animals. I literally guided ram hunts professionally, just one valley over. I had never seen anything like this. The wind was starting to pick up and howling down the gully. I felt its bite on my hands. The light dusting of snow from the night before was getting whipped up around the gully. Thin, frantic sheets and clouds of light snow that looked almost like electric bursts as the tiny ice crystals catch the light at different times. I started moving around the ram to its right, trying to gain some elevation to stay somewhat above it as I rounded its position to get a look at its face. And big horn sheep don't attack people. They're skittish as hell, and so I wasn't necessarily scared of that, but this thing, it seemed unwell, and so I figured all bets were off. As I was sidestepping around it, the wind in the gully started messing with the pressure in my ears, as it can. Felt like I was landing in an airplane, and my ears popping slightly dulled in the volume of Reggie snarling and barking, and the wind howling down around the rocks too. My heart was pounding pretty good at this point. I got to a spot about 8 feet directly to its right, and about 3 or 4 feet above it on the slope of the gully, and I could start to make out its face. My heart rate was going insane, uniquely so, and to the point I actually noticed it. The pressure change made it so I could hear my heartbeat thundering in my ears, and feel it throbbing in my cheeks and eyes. Felt like I'd taken 10 Adderall, chugged a Red Bull and then sprinted a mile. I was trying to calm myself down and get a grip only made me more jumpy, and anxious. I took another step and could see its mouth now. It was slightly agape, with milky snot running from its nose and saliva dripping from its bottom lip, with little spurts and flecks of both shooting out every time it exhaled a steamy breath. "What the fuck?" I kept saying aloud. I took another step and could start to see its eyes behind the big, full curls of its horns, which were poked with scars and abrasions from a lifetime of battling other rams and existing in this hard, rocky country. I took another step so I was able to essentially look at it from the front, and for the first time and see its full features. It had tears pouring out of its eyes, and it sounded almost like it was moaning. Alright, I thought, this thing is incredibly fucked up. Is it a virus or something? Is its lower spine broken? I wanted to put it out of its misery, but shooting a bighorn sheep without a license is a felony with a $15,000 fine. And so I started thinking about hiking back and calling the Fish and Game officers. I lowered my shotgun and was about to turn and go back towards the dog, and when it snapped its head up to the right and looked right at me. Until my last day alive, I will never forget that moment. All the wind was knocked out of me, or sucked out of me. It felt like I was free-falling, and with my stomach in my throat, I couldn't move. I pissed myself, just straight up urinated in my pants, and for the first time since I was a toddler. Tears started rolling out of my eyes and down my cheeks. My hands and feet went numb. I didn't notice the dog move, but Reggie was suddenly right at my feet and with a strap from my backpack in his mouth, fiercely pulling on it as hard as he could, as though we were playing a tug-of-war, and yanking me back the way I'd come. But I couldn't move. I couldn't raise my shotgun. I couldn't look away from the ram. I was stuck. And then the ram started weeping. That's the only way I can describe it. Fucking weeping. It didn't move its body, only its head, but it was whimpering and weeping like a fucking person. Its facial features became very human. Its eyes bulged. Its bottom lip was quivering. It was whimpering out noises like it was trying to speak between sobs, or sucking in air sporadically like a crying child would. Then, unmistakably, it started speaking. Or more like it started pleading. It only used a total of 3 different words, but they were unmistakable. "Don't go. Don't go. Please, don't go. Don't go. Don't go. Please, don't. Please don't. Go. Don't. Don't." It increased its intensity gradually, from a whimpering pleading to a desperate screaming. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was going to throw up or had already thrown up. After what felt like about 15 seconds, my dog finally yanked on my pack hard enough to get me to stumble, and I lost my footing. I couldn't move my leg to replace my foot, so I went down to one knee and then buckled forward down the slope, rolling onto a shoulder and finally breaking my eye contact with the ram. The second I broke eye contact with that thing, I could breathe again, and the sensation of falling went away. Reggie was whining and barking now, right in my face, licking my cheek between barks and snapping at the straps on my backpack shoulder straps, and yanking me away from where I'd fallen. I pushed myself up onto my palms and just screamed, "Go!" into the dog, and grabbed my shotgun and half sprinted, half crawled up the hill, out of the gully as fast as I could. The ram screaming was getting louder. I started to hurt my ears. Reggie was ahead of me, stopping every 20 feet or so to look at me and bark towards the noise. I could see the dog was shaking like a leaf. The screaming started to turn into a single, unbroken roar that sounded half beast and half wind. The pressure in my head was so bad that a throbbing, reddish blackness flooded my peripheral vision. I could barely see. I kept crawling, scrambling towards my dog's barking, and eventually crossed the crest of the slope at the top of the gully and was on the flat ground again atop of the valley ridge. And right then the roaring stopped. The wind died down, and I felt the pressure inside my head give way. The darkness then faded from my vision, and the light of the day filled the world again. I stood up and jogged a short distance until the thirst like I'd never felt came over me. I collapsed at the base of a rock outcropping and called Reggie over. I took probably 25 gulps of water out of my camelback. I realised I'd thrown up all over myself at some point while scrambling out of the gully, or maybe before. I had a few deep cuts in my palms and knuckles. Reggie was still shaking like he had just come out of an ice bath, and whining as though he was hurt. I checked him for injuries, but he seemed alright, and so I gave him some water and put an arm around him, trying to calm him down a bit. I wiped as much dirt and snow-caked vomit off of my coat as I could with my bandana, while keeping an eye on the shotgun barrel trained on the crest of the gully, expecting a deep dread to see a ram horn slowly coming over the crest. But they didn't. After a minute or so, I got my shit together. I took another sip of water and stood up and booked it the entire 3 miles or so back to my truck, jogging the entire way. As soon as I could see my truck, I fumbled for my keys out of my coat pocket and unlocked it and bolted straight for the driver's side door. I threw the dog into the passenger seat, the gun into the back seat, and piled in behind the wheel without even taking my pack off, fired her up and tore down the road, much faster than was safe. I got to the highway and didn't stop until we were in my driveway. It's been 2 weeks since that day. I still haven't been able to sleep a full night or talk to anyone about it. The hell would I tell people without them thinking I've lost my mind? Reggie has never liked sleeping in my bed before, but he is curled up as close as he can be to me every night since. I have no way to rationally explain what happened out there. I have no clue what it was controlling or possessing that animal. It felt like there was a person in that ram, somewhere. It felt like a person's spirit was stuck in there and desperately wanted out. However, based on the way my dog was acting, I also got the feeling that if I did help it, I wouldn't have ever left that gully. I am sincerely terrified in a way I've never known possible. Wow. Absolutely awesome hunting cryptid story there for you guys. What a mysterious and chilling tale indeed. That one by the fantastic mind of VatoCabron. That one's by the incredible mind of VatoCabron. Once again, brother, an absolutely show-stopping story there. Thank you ever so much for your support and allowing me to make a rendition of your incredible work. Guys and girls, as ever, you know the drill. Please do let us know what you thought down below in the comments box. Please do like and share. It really does help build the channel and our community further. And why not hashtag TeamFEAR? Of course, if you have a story you'd like to share with us here or on the show, whether it's a true or fictional piece, please do get it over to my email, which is dmtforestofear@gmail.com. I hope you guys are all well and happy and keeping fit and focused. And above all, remember, be safe, not sorry.